Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I connected a Mixamo animation to my character and then created some clothes for him and simulated them. So let's get started. So first, let's open up my rig. So I'm going to make a new scene and create a reference and import my rig. So I have an advanced skeleton published rig. The character I modeled a long time ago, and I decided to make a rig for him using advanced skeleton. So now I want to be able to see the joints that I'm going to be working with. So I want to open up the deformation system and just Shift H on the skeleton here. And if I press this button here, this will show us the skeleton. I can also hide the controls and the geo here. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add this skeleton to a new layer and just call it like the fit skeleton, like that. And then save that and set that to R, like that, so I can't select it by accident. Now let's import our strut walking. So this is what I want to use. Now in order to download it, you want to go into Mixamo. I like to download the animation in place so I can then loop it and just click download. You don't need the skin, so I do without skin, set frame rate to 24, click download, and then I make a folder in my project folder called Mixamo, and then I drop the FBX in there. And then we can just import here, like this, strut walking, import. You can see there it is. And it's gonna come in big because I'm working in decimeters, so that the scale of my characters are 1/10 of real world scale if the units in my are in centimeters, so I'm working in decimeters. So you can just set this to 0.1. This will get you into roughly the same shape if you're working in decimeters as well. And then I'm going to scale it down a little more just to match the root here, like that. Let's go from the front. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go into Advanced Skeleton, into the selector here, go to Anim, and open up the mocap matcher. You want to set this to Mixamo, and open up this group here, select the skeleton that you imported, and click scan. This will add it right here. Then we need to scale the skeleton to match. We did an okay job. And then we want to zero out the joints. So with the skeleton selected, click zero out joints. It's going to zero this out. It doesn't always do a great job. So what I like to do is go into in perspective view and then see if there's any weird rotations or anything like that. And sometimes there are. So you can see if I select this joint here, I have the Z and Y aren't 0. So I just type in 0 here, and that's going to make sure that everything is zeroed out. The next one is fine, and the next one is fine. But sometimes for some reason this joint in Mixamo is not zeroed out, and then your rig basically is not symmetrical at that point. So let's unhide the fit skeleton, and you can see when it sets the skeleton that way, we kind of aren't lined up anymore. So I only want to line up the bottom of the feet and the root. That's the most important part here. Sorry, I don't need this for now. So now I'm going to select, I like to select the root here, and then just snap and hold V and snap it to the root of the skeleton I'm matching to. Now we can start matching the rest. Now I can't rotate this joint because that's the root, so I'm going to just hold V and snap these guys to the joint, to that joint there, to the hip joint. And then the rest, I'm going to try and do as much as I can rotation and scale. Because the scale on these joints is not keyed, so it's okay to scale it. And I'm going to just rotate like this. It's just getting in the way. Okay. And just continue this. And so what I found works best is if I just rotate and scale the joints, and then for the last little bit I just snap it, and you just need to get it close enough, and it seems to work best that way. I get the least amount of like penetration or any kind of weird thing going on with the arms or the legs are going inside the character. So this seems to work best that I found for my testing. Once everything's lined up, you want to make sure your rig is set to FK. You want to connect the mocap skeleton, and then we want to bake. So if we unhide the geo, that, and click bake. Let's go back into our rig here. I'm going to hide the skeleton, and then also I'm going to hide the skeleton from Mixamo, and then hit play. And there it is. So if there's any adjustments you want to make, let's make sure we're playing back in real time. Yep. We can make any adjustments to the skeleton, to the animation. If you want to change the head position, all I need to do is go into animation, graph editor, and I want to find the controller, the rotation axis for the head, and that's the Z rotation here. So I'm going to select the Z rotation, and then if I want to change the position where the head is while it's walking, so I feel like it's pointing down like way too much, so I'm just going to move it up or down until I get the desired effect. Over that. I also want to move his arms forward, and the forward rotation on the arms is from the shoulders here, and it's also the Z rotation. So I'm going to select the Z rotation on both, and then move that up as well. Way too much. Now the other thing you'll notice is that there's these gaps here, right? And these gaps are from because your rotation could be the same at like 90 degrees and 270 degrees. So you want to fix that, and there's an easy fix for this. I'm going to go into my biped here and go to anim. Sorry, not anim. Click all. This will show me all of them. You can see there's a lot of these like valleys that I'm seeing. So I'm going to select all the animation and go to curves and click Euler filter. It's going to fix all of that. I'm just going to test the animation that it's still good. Yep, that's good. And then the next thing we want to do is we need some pre-roll, because if once I export this into Marvelous Designer, Marvelous Designer is built, usually you do your clothes in A pose or T pose. So in order for me to be able to simulate, I need to go from the A pose or T pose into the animation. The easiest way to do this is just to take my animation. So I'm going to select all here and then move it over 50 frames. So I'm going to give myself more time. So let's do 300 frames. I'm going to move this, all of the animation here, to frame 50. And right here, frame 50. 50 frames should be enough. And now I can go to frame 1, or 0 in this case. Let's just do 1. That's fine. We don't need a frame 0. Go into, make sure that all of my keys are selected. Go to pose and do reset. So that's going to take me into bind pose. And now I can just, in here, press S. That's going to key everything. Now what I want to do again is select everything and do a Euler filter again. And then double check our animation. Now the other thing I want to do is there's an IK FK switch that is here as well. So I'm going to go to frame 1 and make sure that my skeleton is set to all FK. So frame 1 should also be all FK. So key that. That was one of the issues as well. So let's double check. Here we go. We hide the controls. Should be able to see what's happening here. So this gives us enough time for the rotation, for all of the keys to rotate into place, and then he'll strut. Now I want to key some of this animation so that we have, so we can loop it. Now if I go to the frame 50, and then the last frame of the animation, you can see they're exactly the same. So that means we need to select the last frame and delete it. Now I can select these keys here, click copy, and paste. Go to 1 frame over and paste. paste. You can also use infinity, but for testing, this is just easy. It's just a few control V's. And we'll get to 300 frames. Like that. We don't need anything beyond 300, so that's good. So now we have 300 frames that we can do some cloud simulation. Alrighty. Back it up. Now we need to get this animation into Marvelous, and the best way to do it is to export it as Alembic. So I just need the geometry here. That's all we need. We'll go into cache. Oh, by the way, Marvelous Designer likes high-res geometry because you can see that there's not that much geometry here on the body, so you'll actually be able to see these steps, the facets, and the only thing that we need that are affected by the close is the body. So I'm going to select the body, and before the export, just do a poly smooth like that. It's going to be a little slow, but it's fine. We don't really care about that because we're just going to be exporting as Alembic, and the Alembic is going to be fine. So go to Alembic cache, export selection to Alembic, and we need to export it. So let's see, we do anim walk cycle. This will be this will be walk strut version 1, like that. And the animation will do, the range is going to be time slider, and then I always make sure UV right is on and click export. Alright guys, so our Alembic is exported. You can always test it. I want to make a new scene. Don't want to save this. Go to cache, Alembic cache, import Alembic, and here's our walk strut. We'll just import that. There it is. Set our frame range to 300 and hit play. There he is. Alright, so let's go into Marvelous. So this is a little suit I made for this guy. I can do more videos if you guys want on how to use a Marvelous Designer, but it's pretty simple. You make shapes and then you drape them over your character. So if you, let's say I want to make a polygon shape, I can click, like if you were to make a shirt, this is how you would do it. That, so you make a shape like this. The synchronization will start to get a little slow when you have a lot of parts here. So you can see I have a bunch of pieces here. Oops. You have some curve controls here. You can click like this and add that. And I can also select this point here, move that down, holding shift, then add curvature to this. And you place it over the character where you think it's supposed to be. You can click it, rotate it, place it. Now if I want to make the other side, you can right click and symmetric pattern with sewing. That's the clone you want, which is also Control D. Do that. So you can see now you have two of them. You can then sew it together using the stitch here, like that. And then you can make a back, sew that together, and then you'll drape it, and it'll drape on a character. Okay, so that's how you build all the pieces. Make sure if you're layering things, so I have, you know, these pockets and stuff on top of other surfaces, you want to make sure that you set layers. So sometimes you forget to do that. So this is layer 1 and this piece is layer 2. That way Marvelous knows that it's on top and not underneath it. So once you go through this process and make all of your clothes and they simulate fine, so I can click the simulate button here. Always takes a little time for it to start. There's the clothes are actually simulating now, and we can tell because we can take the clothes and just pull them and see what happens here. Like that. Alright, so before I do the simulation, I also like to do UVs. So I'll go to the UV editor here and I'll lay out my UVs, and you can lay them out and view them just like this, and I base it based where my geometry is on my previous character, on my actual character. This way, when I export the clothing, it'll already be UV'd, and I don't have to worry about UVing it later. Now, the other thing I like to do when I make all this stuff is I like to make it into quads. Now, Marvel's Designer has some retopology tools you can turn on, but it's not that great. So instead, what I do is I just go into the mesh type and set them all to quad. You can also change in your settings. You can set up so that your default geometry is quads, and you can tell by clicking here and turning this on. You can see this is the geometry, and it's not like, you know, it looks a little messy, but it works really well for the type of simulation that it's doing. And these quads render well, so I'm not really worried about that. And then the other thing I also like to do is change the particle distance, and that is, if I turn this on, you can see some of the smaller surfaces look denser, and that is because if I select this surface, you can see it has a particle distance of 6. The distance is the space between like vertices. So the smaller the space, the denser the geometry. And this one is 15 because this one doesn't need as many like fine creases, but these surfaces do. So you want to kind of tweak it until you get it right. Then we can go into animation. And in animation is where we'll start animating. Now, there's nothing here to animate yet. So what we need to do is we need to import our Alembic. I already have my character in here in T-pose, so now I'm going to go into File, Import, and all you do is just, you don't have to set anything special, just click Import Alembic, and we'll import the strut walk, the walk strut, click Open, and here I'm going to do Add, right? So I want to add it, and here's the thing. I'm working in centimeters, and because I'm in centimeters, in order for the scale to be the same as in Maya, I need to set the percent to 1000 because the units in Marvelous are different than in Maya, and I'm going to be at 24. So when I'm exporting it in centimeters at 10%, and I'm importing at 1000%. If you do it a couple times, you'll remember it, and it'll be fine. All right, so now it's imported, and you can see it imported with animation. You can see there's 300 frames. So now I can click this button to simulate, like that. Now here's the thing, a little trick. Sometimes you want to make sure, you want to see how many cores the simulation is using. So if I click and hold and then select normal again, you'll see the property editor come up for the simulation. And the number of CPUs in use, sometimes it's set to 4. I have 16 cores, so I'm going to set this to 12, so I can have 4 cores to do other stuff with. Now the next step is just to hit this record button. For the first 50 frames, it's just going to get into position, and then we'll start simulating. And right away I can see that it's way too fast. You can see some of the surfaces are just like bouncing way too much, which is very unrealistic. So there's a solution for this. I'm going to stop it, rewind, and there's a scene time warp. And I found that usually a scene time warp of 4 works really well. And what Marvelous will do is we'll just extend the timeline here. And it'll give us a lot more frames to simulate, and it's going to take longer, but it's going to be much better. So now I'm going to press. I also found that if I run the simulation first using the simulate button here, and then hit record, I get a better result. So I'll hit record now, and then just let it go. Alright, so now we can set the scene time warp back to 1. And hit play. Rewind and hit play and take a look. Okay, that looks great. So now we need to export it, and that's really easy. All we need to do is go into simulation, select the things we want to export, back into animation, then file, export as an Alembic Ogawa, like that. I'm going to call this close. This will be walk strut, save. And I like to export as unweld thin. You want to make sure unified UV coordinates are on. 24 frames, and again, this is centimeters, and because it's an export, it's going to be 10%. And we want to do the entire region. Yep, and click OK. Cache, Alembic cache, import Alembic, strut. There it is. It's two-sided lighting, and hit play. There we go. Let's check out the UVs. And if I select my character and the UVs, you can see they're laid out together. They're laid out really well because they're based on the shapes that you make. We can also just go to frame, set this to start at frame 50. That's it. Now we can just texture it, light it, and good to go. And then if you have any other animations you want to add, you just keep exporting Alembics. Make sure you do the 50 frame wind up, and you can do all of your shots that way. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to leave a comment, please do so. It helps me, and subscribe. And if you want to see more Marvelous Designer videos, let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys.